G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and how are you tonight? Thanks so much for joining me, and if you are rewatching this, thanks so much for coming back and rewatching. As always, I do start the stream with telling you guys, head over to my YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe so you don't actually miss out on anything. I've got some exciting guests coming up in the future, especially next year. People who are getting books together and are waiting for that appropriate time to join me on this channel and promote what they've got for you. Now, we also have the playlist over at YouTube where I've got some incredible people over there. I've got artists that I've interviewed, such as like Brian Davis last week, Wealth and Knowledge, definitely getting him back on for another. I've got Rex Richardson, Mark Nightingale, Mike Lovett, James Copus, Tom Walsh, Chris Castellanos, Larry Mariglano. Honestly, go check them out. There's incredible. And obviously tonight I have an incredible young trombone player with me. He is on just about everything. You probably watched him the other day. I think he was on the Christmas special with Gary Barlow. We can get into that if you want. But honestly, guys, this is a live thing. Get in, ask questions. He's a monster himself. Actually, you know what? Let's let his playing do the work. Let's have a bit of a listen to this. Yes, Tom White, everyone. What a player, what a man. He's obviously recorded that at home during lockdown. He recorded every single part on that. That was Count Me Out, Jazz Crimes by Joshua Redman, and he arranged that himself. Honestly, you need to get on with Tom, get on here, ask questions, pick his brain, but obviously we have to get the stream started. So here we go. Yes, Tom White, ladies and gentlemen, from London. You would have heard him many a time, even if you don't know his name. He has played with the likes and recorded with the likes of Jamiroquai, Level 42, Incognito, Damon, Albarn, Scouting for Girls, Gloria, Gaynor, the Stan Sulzmann, Big Man, Gareth, Lockrane, Big Man, and Jamie Cullum. I mean, the list goes on. So let's not hold back. Here he is. Tom White, how you doing, buddy?
Hi mate, how you doing? You're right.
Not bad. Thanks so much for joining us. Cheers.
Mate,
Leading up to the Merry Christmas.
indeed.
Obviously, the year hasn't gone according to plan for a lot of people, and I do start my stream this way just to see how everyone's been getting on and how the future looks for people. Could you just dive into a little bit about what happened this year for you and how this has either hindered you or helped you, and how you're planning to move on in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, obviously the year hasn't quite panned out how I would have expected it to. And I think the same goes for everyone. Like no one really expected things to go how they went. All of a sudden, all of the work just sort of, all of the playing just sort of disappeared.
Yeah. Now, were you planning on a tour? Sorry to interrupt you. Were you on a tour, or did you have tours lined up?
I was supposed to be on a show the day that the lockdown started.
No way.
And that was the first. I think that show got cancelled in the morning. Actually, that was kind of cancelled in the morning. So it was incredible for everyone. Incredible time. Totally unexpected. But one thing that it did do was it definitely gave me a lot of time to sort of think about playing wise and generally what it is I wanted to do, what kind of music I wanted to play, also which instrument I wanted to play, in the sense of like which not gonna not play the trombone obviously, but which which kind of instrument. And it's a lot of food for thought, and obviously we're still here sort of in it at the moment, so that thought process sort of still rolling on, still trying to work out where best to go. But strange old year.
It certainly
Been a really
is.
strange old year.
Yeah. And now, from what I know, and I mean, well, I've been very privileged to have worked in bands with you before. So that's great. From what I know, you've done a lot of recording and a lot of playing with different bands and touring and all the rest of it. However, you didn't actually have your studio set up, did you, until lockdown? It sort of forced you to do it. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. In fact, quite fortunately, I thought I'd been not putting it off, but it just hadn't materialised for quite some time. Probably due to the fact I've been away. I've been away touring. I've been away playing, or I've just been too busy or too lazy. You can choose whichever one you like. But I ended up just thinking, you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to buy the studio setup, and I set it all up in February.
Wow.
This year. Yeah, really amazing timing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, quite.
And got it set up. I was clueless as to how to use the software.
Yeah.
And I thought it's going to take me a long time to get to grips with it. And then obviously lockdown happened. And I suddenly found myself with a lot of time to figure out how to use all that software.
Yeah.
So in that way, it was kind of a good thing to have the time to sort of, considering that the only thing, by the time lockdown came in, the only thing I really knew how to do on the software was to change the icon in the so I could change it from just nothing to a picture of a trombone. And I thought, you've got to start somewhere.
You definitely got to start somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but it was. Yeah.
Would you? Sorry to interrupt you, mate. Would you recommend sort of doing this for our amateurs, anyone watching, listening to this, going, you know what, the world's moving to a lot of this setup of, recording at home. This is how, people are getting paid to do it now as well sometimes. So, like what kind of equipment are you using? What kind of microphone, for the guys out there that don't know much, what kind of microphone are you using? And any help for those guys who might want to set up a studio?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I say, it's still been under a year for me, and I know that this is something that's been going on. I've got a lot of friends and colleagues who've had their home setups for a lot longer than I have,
Yeah.
who would who, if they are do listen to me talk about it, will know that I'm at the extent of my knowledge by talking about it like this. But I think ultimately what you need a decent computer that's fast enough to run it. I personally use Logic as software to record through, and I use the obviously you need an audio interface, decent pair of headphones, and a microphone. And I've got a Coles microphone, Coles 4038, which I did a blind test on back in probably about 2019, beginning of 2019. Yep. I think I went over to friend's studio, in fact a mutual friend of ours, studio, and he set up an array of microphones, all different kinds, including one that he'd sort of custom made himself.
Oh wow!
And said, this is very expensive. This is a very lovely mic, It was lovely. It looked great.
Yeah.
And I tried all of them, and the Coles came out on top. And then we tried switching them around and switching the playbacks around, so I wasn't so biased either way.
Yeah.
And it just came out every time it came out on top.
Really?
But I think, and I think it's important to note as well that it's more what
personal.
Worked for me won't work for everyone. Yeah. Exactly that. So, I love the sound. It gives a real depth of sound to the trombone in particular. And I know that it can be used as a kind of kick mic and drum mic as well. But I think the best things to note is just do what I did and just try a load.
Yeah.
See what works for you. Obviously, things are going to get mixed and EQ. Things are going to get changed around. But you want that general sort of bass level of sound to be. You don't want to hear something horrible coming back at you through the headphones, but
no.
You want it to sound good. You want it to complement your instrument. I think that's the key. So just try it all out.
Yeah, and you want to sort of resemble what your sound is. You don't want a mic that changes your sound in a way. So, but yeah. So can you take us back to your beginnings then? Why the trombone? And then how did you get started? Did it, like for me, it was basically doing raspberries for about a year because I had no front teeth. So did you have a similar thing, or did you start off quite well, great setup? Like I've talked to some of these guys and they're like, oh, my teacher was one of the best teachers. My setup was perfect and I haven't really changed, and it's like, oh, I personally had gone through 3 embouchure changes and all the rest of it because of, I didn't have teeth. So I moved over here and then I had to move straight and then I had to move straighter again. You know what I mean? So so take us back to the beginning. Why trombone, why music, and when did you fall in love with it?
Well, it's a lot. So I never actually wanted to play the trombone, funnily enough.
And every trombonist says that. It's really weird.
And a lot of trombonists still say it. But a lot of I genuinely, it wasn't on my radar. I mean, I loved the sound of it because I'd grown up inadvertently listening to it.
Yeah.
But ideally, I wanted to play the saxophone. That was the instrument I really wanted to play.
Right. Wow.
I think for those kind of, and not to offend any saxophone players, but I think for those youthful sort of, it's a cool instrument reasons, which it is. I'll say it is a cool instrument.
It certainly is.
They all,
Yeah.
I'm just going to get away from that muddy territory of saxophone. So I wanted to play the sax, but they already had a lot of saxophones at the school I was at. They had a lot of sax players in the different ensembles, different bands, and so I believe what it was is they had a trombone sitting in a cupboard in the music department or somewhere, and they basically said, I hear what you're saying about saxophone, but here's a trombone. Essentially, that was sort of how the conversation went. And I remember getting it home and opening the case up, and it was I can't even remember what instrument it was. I mean, it wouldn't have been anything spectacular. And trying to put it together. And I think when I first put it together, I set it up the wrong way around. So I had the bell on the right-hand side and the slide on the left-hand side. So my left hand, I'm right-handed, my left hand was on the slide. It was, and I just sort of learned taught myself for a few days that way round, and then I went for my first lesson, and they just went, no, yeah, that's how you do it.
Brilliant.
And it just sort of went from there. And there were definitely a few moments over those formative years, anyway, where I thought, you know what, this isn't really necessary. This isn't the instrument for me. But gradually, the more I got used to it, and also the more, as soon as I could start getting proper notes out of it, and as soon as I could actually start playing basic melodies, or at least the idea of a melody, or something, I thought, actually, it's got a really. I mean, I didn't have a nice sound at that point, but I say it's got a nice sound. The instrument has a nice sound. It's fun. It's actually, I'll give it a bit more time. And now, X amount of years later, here I am still doing it. So it's a lot to be said for it. But also, you mentioned about teachers, and having certain teachers growing up. And I had, I think my first teacher was a tuba player, and I think I think his heart might have not been in it anymore. That was I think that's we'll say that.
Yeah.
Then after that, I think I moved over, started having private lessons, and had a couple of teachers. And then my family relocated, and I got another teacher. And but yeah, they were all fantastic in their own way. I think as soon as I went and had some kind of private lessons, and I know that a few of them, I think one of the teachers I had growing up, I think, has now become a scuba diving instructor. I think he's a scuba diving instructor now.
He's making the money.
Trombone's a Harsmith. Yeah, exactly. So good teachers growing up, and obviously there are going to be problems, like embouchure problems, and various things that need ironing out. And as you know, as well, like with playing a brass instrument, there are so many things that can, things that can go wrong. Even to this day, even now, you're traveling, you're gigging, you're touring, you're doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And some days it will hurt. Some days it doesn't feel right. Some days, if it's cold, you get a chapped lip. Yeah. So many little things that come into play, which you can't really prepare for. But I think my teachers did sort of set me up in good stead for the general playing. I mean, but yeah. So I think I'd still like to have a go on a saxophone one day if I can, but I think I'm happy sticking with trombone, to be honest with you.
You got a dream to fill anyway, let's put it that way.
Well, exactly, yeah, I've got a studio to fill as well.
Well, exactly, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, you just nailed it on the head. For me, it could, like, even if you sleep wrong, if you sleep in a pillow, and your chops are like that, like, it's, who knows, like, the chops just don't feel the same every day. And my old teacher in university used to always say to me, he goes, every day's a fight with your trumpet. And it's just some days you win and sometimes it does. And it's that's just exactly life. That is brass playing down 101. Exactly. So I always remember that quote. So thanks, John Hoffman. He's not very, he's a bit of a technophobe, so he's probably never listening to these, but thank you, John Hoffman. Anyway, okay, great. So was there one significant moment in your life? Like, did you hear an album, or did you how did your sound come about? Like, how did you find that? Was it you've just always sort of sounded that way, or was there a significant time that you heard and just went, you know what, that's incredible, I want to sound like that?
Well, I guess like right back in the beginning, I mentioned that I think inadvertently I'd been listening to trombone without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And I think that stemmed through my granddad, who was really into jazz, lots of different music, but he was really into the Louis Armstrong, Big Spider Beck, that era. And when I would go and stay, so this was down in Devon,
mm-hmm.
and I'd go on summer holidays, Christmas holidays sometimes. We'd go down, and he'd always be putting these cassettes on, these records or cassettes of Louis Armstrong, really like some of them barely audible recordings. You would have heard some of them. They just think, You know,
You hear more. You
I
hear
could
more
probably,
of the scratch on the LP than you do the actual tune.
yeah. He's like, I
Yeah.
think there are musicians playing here. I
Yeah.
can't really tell. But yeah. So just listening to those and listening to that. So I think now when I look back, I realise that it was there was an enthusiasm that he had for that music.
Yeah.
And then as a knock-on effect, I ended up listening to Jack Teagarden
Oh wow.
initially.
Yeah.
So Jack Teagarden was the sort of doing I've Got a Right to Sing the Blues and all these tunes where he's singing and playing. Great recordings, absolutely fantastic recordings, and wonderful trombone playing.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't think I fully appreciated it when I was, so tiny. But as I grew up, I sort of realised, I realised who it was, and so I started actively seeking out some more recordings that he'd done over the years. But also, I became more aware that also this is after I'd already taken the trombone up, that my granddad was sort of a closet fan of the trombone, and he'd always wanted to play it.
Brilliant.
But I didn't realise that until I already had one in my hand, so it was sort of a funny coincidence that sort of happened.
Yeah.
But I think early on, I was listening to a lot of those recordings, and then that sort of led me to growing up through my kind of sort of pre-teens, early teens. I'd sort of sit in with local trad bands. So you sort of like Sunday afternoon in the local pub, sort of just doing like foot stomping Dixie stuff, which I still love it. I think it's
builds your chops, man. It builds your chops.
You know what? It really does, doesn't
it?
Yeah, it's a lot. So just listening to those guys play, and some of these guys, would have been in their well into their 80s, and they're, and you think how, with all due respect, how are they going to be able to play? Because they don't seem, they're taking ages getting the instruments out. I was like, how's this going to be? And then they start playing. You're like, oh, this is fantastic. This is their love and their passion, and you can feel it. And I think I remember I have one vivid memory of being again down in Devon, in a little village. I went down and I was sitting in with a band. I don't think the band exists anymore, but they were playing just what I now know as a lot of standards essentially. And I sat in, and I remember asking, "Oh, where's the music?" And they're just like, he's like, no. And it's like, oh, so have you got any? What are the chords to this one? Thinking, oh, I'm going to do some soloing. I said, what are the chords? They're like, we should know what they are.
Listen, yeah, exactly.
Listen. And I think that's a recurring thing of listen, like use your ears, and like if it sounds appropriate and it sounds right, the chances are it's appropriate and it's right.
Yeah.
If you're questioning yourself too much, then you think don't know, maybe this isn't the right thing to do here. If it's just not. I think you're just using your intuition, just be like, But I think generally, so listening to those guys play, and funnily enough, going back to the saxophone thing, I ended up. The musicians who sort of inspired my improvisatory style, the way I like to solo on the trombone, a lot of that comes from sax players. Like I listen to a lot more sax players than I did trombone players, which
it's amazing.
So I obviously I love listening to trombone players, and I'd be silly not to listen to other trombone players, obviously. But listening to sax players and the way they darted around the instruments and the way that they did these long elongated lines that just flow up and down across the instrument, across the changes. I was like, I want to do that. Like I want to be able to do what they do.
Yeah, it definitely explains a lot when people listen to your playing. Because it's almost fluid in the way, like you don't think about it in range, like, oh, I'm going to go up high, or I'm going to go down. Like it's just all part of what you're doing, and that is very sax-like, because they're just obviously put the keys down, but I mean, they've even got an octave key. I mean, how easy can it get? So,
Yeah.
I'm not saying sax is easy. No, I'm just saying. But yeah, and it, yeah. So how do you have? Is that how you've like trained yourself to sort of be quite fluid in your playing? Have you just like imitated and transcribed sax solos, have you, and just gone from there pretty much? I mean, Bob McChesney, he used to be like that, didn't he? He was he was all over it as well. Yeah. But
I think yeah, absolutely. I mean, just absolutely all over it.
Yeah.
But it was I think it's for me it was definitely a cross between just generally just being inspired by listening to certain sax players, and sax players like like in the modern era, listening to players sort of like Chris Potter.
Oh yeah.
And guys like that.
He's still doing live streams now. He's just sort of sax solos and stuff, and it's really interesting to listen to. So
yeah, and I think some of the original stuff was listening to like Brecker and Bob Berg, and players like that who just crazy power, having the power behind the sound, but also being able to do that. But yeah, some combination of listening to those guys, and also knowing the sort of inherent capabilities of the instrument that I'm playing. So knowing that you've got all these alternate positions available to you, knowing that you have this way of getting here and that way of getting there, and just having it as second nature. And I think that's something that is quite important to know just across the board, is knowing all, I hesitate to call them shortcuts because they're not, but I think, but there are ways around the instrument that can really, really help you out. Like
instead of going 1 to 7, and if you can go 1 to 4 in slide position rather than 1 to 7, I mean, make your life easier. Like,
no one wants to go 1 to. I haven't even got my trombone here.
That's all right.
But
so what would you recommend then? Would you recommend that, like, learning those kind of skills over, like, it's not a shortcut as you said, but would learning those, say, alternate positions, and then sitting there in a practice room and figuring different ways out slowly, would that be a real beneficial for some of our young listeners out there?
Yeah, I'd say it is. I mean, I'd say not exclusively. Obviously, I mean,
No.
you've got to work on everything, but it's definitely, even not with regards to doing crazy fast solos all over the instrument.
Of course.
Just as a general rule of thumb, I think it's really helpful to know. It's good to have it, and I'd go so far. I'll say it's essential knowledge, for reasons like you just explained. No one wants to be going 1st to 7 ever.
Yeah.
Sometimes, very rarely, can't be avoided. Yeah. But especially going up to the top of the instrument.
Yeah.
And just knowing little ways around that can just make the line smoother, just make your life a little bit easier. I'd say it's definitely one of those things that's worth knowing, and just having a little bit of a play around with, because some of the time, some of the notes can be slightly flat, some of them sharp, they can be a little bit pokey here and there.
Yeah.
It's just knowing where they sit and knowing them without having to think about them. I think that's the way. Then they just come to you organically. And but if this is the line that I'm reading or the line I want to perform, then I know it's there, but I don't have to consciously think about it. If that makes sense.
Geeking out a little bit on that, so trombone wise, every time I played with you always never needed a trombone with a trigger, because you just do it. You just do it, figure it out, and all the rest of it. Now, would you, for our young listeners or guys out there, would you recommend learning on a trigger instrument? That way can make it easier, or would you just stick with what no trigger, and just figure it out yourself?
I would say that there's a lot to be said for learning trigger. I'm going to hold my hands up and say that it's something I've never really delved into too much.
Yeah.
And I'd say for all different manner of reasons, it's definitely worth looking at, knowing how to get around. For the bottom end, it's handy. It's definitely worthwhile doing. But as with with everything, there's no cheat. There's no
No.
cheat button. There is no
Sometimes
way
we wish there
cheating the
was.
instrument. Yeah, I know. There's no way of doing that. So you've got to figure it out and work it out and work out what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. I mean, I've got a great mate, Patrick Johns. He sometimes listens, so if you are, mate, thanks so much for tuning in. But he's funny. I play in a group with him, and he writes some stuff. But he figured out one time that he could do most of the song on just trigger. So he challenged himself just to do it open with just his trigger, and he's trying to get like in the middle notes and everything like that. It was very funny to watch.
Yeah.
But it's just experiment, guys out there. Like don't get stuck in one thing. But there's something to be said about obviously playing triggerless. Like what trombone are you on? You're a king, aren't you?
Yeah, king.
Yeah, it's a beautiful instrument. You play it so lovely. So when you approach, I mean, looking at your list of guys you've played and recorded with, like there's some big people out there, and there's quite a few pop things, really. I mean, you were just on the latest Christmas show, weren't you, with Gary Barlow as well? Yeah. So, I mean, that could be anything from, I'm guessing, quite classically to big band to pop. You must have all different realms in there. So, so how do you approach the different stuff? Because I'm about to play a video of you playing these beautiful lyrical lines. And so is there a way that you prepare for some of these gigs? Do you prepare different for each gig? Or do you just, you work through your fundamentals and just like, how do you change from one chart going, or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're, woo, they're just beautiful playing. Like, what's going through your head when who you're thinking of?
Well, a lot of the time, when I'm flicking between the two, like if I've got the time, I find it really helpful to listen, just have my headphones on and listen to something completely different. Set the mood, for myself. So as you say, if I've been doing something that is like crazy tempo, like all over the place, and then you move on to a ballad, or you've done an improvising gig, and then you're moving on to something that's exclusively through composed. Written. It presents its own challenges, but I think that for me, what really seems to work is just to have a bit of time away, just to sort of listen to the music that I'm about to approach, and just kind of get that in my head, so that it gives me I go into it feeling in the mood of the music. But if it's on the same gig and these tunes are back, if it's on the same gig and these tunes are back to back, that's a whole that just I guess that comes from just having had to do it so many times.
Experience,
and you get used to it, or I mean, it can be tricky. Like the amount of times I've over the years I've done jazz gigs, for example, and I've just had back to back up tempo 300 BPM plus tunes, and then a cheeky ballad gets thrown in, and I'll play it, won't think anything of it, in the way that I won't be analysing what I've played while I'm doing it. Then I'll come off and someone will mention me, so like, you played pretty much everything about like 4 times faster than like everything was super fast in the ballad, and it's just trying to find that pressure valve, just release some of that pressure, just like just rein it in just for a little bit, because ultimately the performance is better if you don't just play everything the same way every time, because it engages.
Exactly. And you are telling a story, aren't we? Like every time we pick our instruments, we're expressing how we personally feel, and that's the greatest thing about music. Obviously, that's why it's so different, because everyone is different. So moving on with that as well, like preparing for that, you obviously need to, if someone throws a ballad with you, for some reason for trombones, unless you're a bass trombone, the ballads are always quite in the stratosphere. They're quite up there, aren't they? So is there an exercise book that you used, or is there just stuff that you've created yourself, or something going on here that you worked on to be able to just have so much control in the upper register?
It's going to sound incredibly cliched, but a lot of practice. I've never really worked through the books myself, and I can see the benefit, and I know a lot of players. In fact, I was just the other day having a rehearsal with another trombone player, and we were talking, and he had a book of exercises with him saying he does it every single, tries to do it as often as possible.
Yeah.
And if it works, it's great, and there's nothing wrong with them. In fact, they're brilliant, because they do present these. They can iron out all these kind of imperfections in your playing. They really can. But for me, I just I'm really just a lot of practicing, and also just like long tones in the register, which feels the least comfortable, is the best way for me. It seems to be the best way of doing it. So if you're going to be playing up the top end of the horn, don't just, as it were, don't just poke around at the notes. Actually, just play them and hold them. Commit to them and play them, and by all accounts fail miserably a few times, because that's the only way it's going to get any better.
There's a lot of people out there, I think, that they think practice, when they're in a practice room, they should be sounding good because someone might be listening. It's like, no, that's your time to not sound good. That's your time to try things, to push yourself, and learn. Discover what works and what doesn't work. So honestly, get yourself out there, guys, and don't sound bad, but try and sound better. Anyway, Tom, we're going to, if you indulge me, I'm going to play this beautiful piece that you did called "My Ship" by Kurt Weill and Ira Gershwin, that you arranged, and it's going to show off, like you said, beautiful long tones, but obviously you're up there as well. So let's take a listen. Wrong button. Apologies for that. Absolutely beautiful, Tom. Beautiful playing on that. Yeah, I hit the wrong button there. Apologies to our watchers.
Is it? Oh, no.
Yeah, it's like done. See you later. Yeah, incredible playing. Such control as well. And I'm guessing, was that on the same trombone that you were playing the bass lines on as well?
It was, yes.
Sorry,
Yeah,
let me get you back on screen here. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, try again.
Ah, yes, it was. Yeah, yeah. So it was all done on that horn. So it's just the 5 parts. The 5 parts layered up, as it was for the other one for the Jazz Crimes. It was the
Yeah.
all on the same horn with five.
So how do you
five individual-
approach that though? Like, obviously, you're not got this massive horn, you know, but you're approaching
Yeah.
the low notes. Like, is it something you're doing in your mouth to really get that beautiful, you know, sound going on?
Yeah. Also, there was practicing down at the bottom end
Yeah.
practicing down at the bottom end, but also the proverbial hat off to having a fantastic microphone that picks up the low end of the trombone
Yeah.
absolutely fantastically.
Yeah.
It's that does play a part. It's not, it definitely does play a part, but similar to holding long tones in the top end of the horn.
Yeah.
It's just as important to be able to have control, not just be able to tank out the bottom end of the instrument, but to be able to just hold those notes and play those notes at a low volume. It takes its own sort of presents its own challenges, being down that end, down at the dusty end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it takes a special type of bloke to be playing down there all the time on bass trombones. I mean, someone that does it quite well, actually, I think, is Andy Wood. He,
yes.
I didn't even know he could play bass trombone. The amount of gigs I saw when I first arrived at this country, I saw gig after gig, and he sat on the top chair, and he's just laying it down. It's beautiful, some stunning playing. And then I rocked up at this gig, and I was just like, "What's Andy doing on bass trombone?"
Yeah.
and he loves it. And I've now seen him do just as much bass trombone as in the top. And I mean, that's a different skill. Like for you guys, it's incredible. You got the world's biggest tuning slide, which I always say, trombone can never be out of tune because you just shift it. So
you say that.
I mean, it must take some great smarts to know exactly, and it must be just memory, knowing exactly where. Like it must be just like wrist and elbow memory. Like, did you do?
I mean,
how did you go about it? How did you approach knowing the exact position you need to be in each time?
Well, I've said to people in the past, it's hard when you're young. If you start to learn when you are quite young, your body's still growing. It's one of those instruments that I couldn't get to the bottom of the instrument when I started.
Yeah,
my arm wasn't long enough, and I couldn't get the extension I needed. But a lot of it is it is muscle memory, and you get a feel for where things are when you get to a point where your arms just stop getting longer.
Yeah.
I think if your arms keep getting longer, it's going to confuse your brain a little bit. So I think once your arms decided it's going to stop, it's good, because then you can really start to settle into that feeling of like, right, I know where this is. If I extend down, I can get the low B and the low E.
Yeah.
Here, that's where it is for me.
Yeah.
That being said, obviously, different trombones, they are different.
True.
Different instruments are different. So, but once you've got to that point where you know where it is, I feel that you can. It just takes a little bit of time if you pick up a new instrument. Like, oh, that's slightly different to mine, or that was not like the old one. But it doesn't take, at that point, it doesn't take long to just go, all right, it makes sense. That's okay. So that's what it is. That's where that goes,
Yeah.
But yeah.
As I said, if you hit a note out of tune, just shift your arm a little bit, you'll be banging tune. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to worry about, really.
Let's move a bit onto your touring. So you've done quite a bit of touring, haven't you? Like since I've known you, anyway. So. Who's one of your favorite people that you've toured with, or tell us some stories about how it is, and can you dive into, because obviously you deal with different there's a lot of guys out here who've probably never done a touring show. There could be someone listening who doesn't know what it's like being on a tour. Sometimes you get great accommodation, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get fed, sometimes you don't.
Absolutely.
But could you just dive in a little bit of it, and also just maybe a bit of chop maintenance for yourself, because obviously if you're going every night or every couple of nights, it's different when you sat in your room trying to each time play it, but when you've got 100,000 people in front of you, it has to be right each time. So you could just dive in a bit of how do you keep your chops going?
Yeah, well, I mean, it is definitely important when you're traveling, when you're touring, whatever it is you're doing, whatever genre of music you're doing, whether you're on stage playing for 1 hour or 1 minute, it doesn't make
Yeah.
any difference. You've still
Yeah.
got to make sure that hour or minute is exactly right every time, as you say. For me, touring, I sort of fell into touring, sort of accidentally as a way of doing it. Quite some time ago, I was kind of dropping in for sort of 1 week or 2 weeks here with various different bands. I think the first place I toured was Germany. I think that was the first country I went to play professionally in.
Yeah.
And I sort of fell in love with the country, and still love the country to this day. If I look at a tour schedule and I see Germany, I'm a very happy man. I'm for all manner of different reasons. Actually,
Of course.
I mean, you know, they don't do things by halves in Germany, and it's brilliant. You're gonna get fed in Germany as well.
Yeah.
But so yeah, for me it sort of happened accidentally. So after doing these little stints with various projects and various bands, I found myself touring ultimately with a band from New York who were a two-tone ska band.
Oh wow.
From New York, one of the original two-tone ska bands, and I ended up touring with them quite extensively, probably for about six years, I'd say.
Oh wow. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, about 5, 6, 7 years. Some of it a haze, some of it not so much of a haze. It was at a time for me when it was the right time for me. I was in my sort of early 20s, early to mid 20s, and it was the right time to travel the world, and see places that I'd never seen before, and some of which I probably will never see again. Either because they're just so remote, or because I just don't want to see them. But yeah, so that was incredible, and I'd always liked the idea of traveling, just in general, but then to actually do it and play and be paid to do it,
it's brilliant.
Was fantastic. And I'd always wanted to go to every place in Europe before I was 30, which I managed to do.
Oh, it's amazing.
Which was great. I think it was about 2 weeks before my birthday, my 30th birthday. Yeah. I went to the last place, which was Portugal, which is strange because for most people that's one of the first ones that you do. But for some reason it had eluded me all those years, and then I think it was a gig in Porto or something, and finally got to tick it off the list. But those days were very much very sort of we're in a splitter van, and sometimes, you know, we'd staying in band accommodation, sometimes driving through the night, so we wouldn't even have a hotel. We'd just do, I think we did it's like a 24-hour drive one time.
Wow.
That was from Spain to Switzerland, I think we did.
Yeah.
We drove it. It's a long way. For anyone who has driven to from Spain to Seville to Zurich, in fact, would know that it's a bit of a drive, that.
Yeah. But this is what I'm talking about. Like, how do you, because then as soon as you get there, you have to do a gig. How do you stay awake? How do you keep your chops going? You know, like,
this is it. So in those kind of situations where you're traveling you got a day off, but it's sucked up with traveling the whole time. Like, you don't really get that opportunity to have your daily practice and your daily maintenance and just keep the things going. I think it's also worth noting as well that some of these tours, they were long. They were sort of 3 months away, 4 months at a time, when we play every day, unless we were driving through the night. So it'd be quite a lot. And you'd be playing the same set every evening.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was about trying to find a moment here and there to play something else.
Yeah.
Just because
keep your brain active.
It's all, yeah, because you know when you get home, there's going to be other gigs that demand other things from you. You see, you can't just rest back and go, oh, I can play this show, so it's fine. You know, it's important to sort of realise that, but that will end, and I'm going to have to do something else at some point. But not being able to play every day, so doing those drives, taught me quite a valuable lesson, which is that, you have to find a way of making it work. Like, you might want to do your allocated long note practice, your this practice, that practice, but you don't always get that.
Yeah.
So it's a case of and I think, again, everyone finds a way of dealing with it. Just buzzing to yourself is a way of doing something.
Yeah.
Just keeping things going. But that was, as I say, those occasions tended to be a while back when I was doing those kind of tours, which, to be honest, great fun. Loved every minute of it. Grueling but fun.
Yeah.
And nowadays it seems to be more. I do get you get more time. You get more time to do the maintenance that you need to do. You don't necessarily find yourself in a club with a microphone that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You'll always have you're in it. You got your IM. You've got a decent sound.
Yeah.
Technology
is amazing.
You just got the best of the business. Like you don't need to worry about it.
No.
As much, and you don't have to blow your chops out every single night. I think that's crucial. Like it hurts. It hurts.
You absolutely nailed on your head. Mic etiquette. Honestly, you don't have to blow as loud as you think. You can play. You can play with the same intensity at a lower volume, and that's something a lot of people don't do. Everyone just blows the living crap out of it when they want something out there, and it's like when you've got a mic in front of you, use it. It's amazing. You watch. Remember. Jim Lynch and Mike Lovett were putting up little videos of them doing 42nd Street, and even in that pit, they were using it. So say this is the mic, and they're in and around, and that's when they're just doing the show, and it's just, but that just means they can save this. There's something to be said about using the mic and using your air. I'm guessing. For you, my next question obviously is because I ask some people this, and sometimes they're just like, blow, use the air. Brian Davis is always like, use the air. Louis and Wayne Bergeron are always like, people need to find that efficiency of air. The misuse don't overblow. So when you wake up on a day and it's not working, what's your little routine? Everyone has those days where it just doesn't work, and you pick it up and you go, and it goes. And that's it. That's the first thing that happens is air. So what's your next step straight after that?
Maybe trim my mustache back a bit.
Fair one. Yeah.
I'll go there first. That's my first port call. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's when that happens, it's hard to immediately put your finger on what the issue is.
Of course.
It could be any manner of things, and not one single thing's going to fix it. Maybe, or maybe sometimes it's just not your day. And you're saying sometimes the horn wins, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's sometimes it's just not your day. But for me, I find it's worth just stripping things back, going back to basics. Like the last few days, I've been practicing pretty hard for some stuff over the weekend.
Yeah.
And just learning tunes and trying to internalize material. So I've been on the horn, like properly playing quite a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling good. Chops wise, things are feeling good. But all too easily you can wake up tomorrow and it won't do.
Yeah.
So strip back to basics for me. Just go back to doing sort of long notes, lip slurs, whatever it is, the basic stuff. Just try and warm into it again. And I think crucially, don't panic.
Yeah.
Because it's quite easy to be like to just go, oh, it's useless, it's not working. Why can't I just?
Yeah.
It's like, no, Jesus, you need to not do that. If it's getting too severe and it's getting too bad, and maybe you had a long night the night before, you've been playing all night or whatever, sometimes the day off is the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
I'm not saying always do, because then you just won't ever play.
Yeah.
But like sometimes, especially if you've been blowing a lot, doing a lot of stuff, it really can help, as you know, like just having a rest day and just let everything just sit back, and then the next day just go back into it.
Yeah, I do feel that our brains get in the way sometimes. We start overthinking it, and then we start going, "Oh crap, that doesn't sound good." And then you're like, "Oh, but the next note's probably not going to sound good." And instead of just taking a step back and going, "Hang on a minute, just breathe and play," and then most of the time it will just solve it.
Yeah, I mean, you liken it to if you're putting up a shelf, for example.
Yeah.
I don't know why I just said I need to put some shelves up here. I need to put some shelves up. If you're putting up some shelves and all of a sudden you don't know what to do, you don't just start hitting as hard as you can. No. You just sort of take a little break and try and figure out what the problem is.
So just take a step back. Yeah, exactly. No, it's very true. So you obviously seamlessly, without us even knowing, move straight on to what's happening on this weekend, which is very exciting. Obviously doing a lot of playing. You have your own quartet, the Tom White Quartet,
yes.
which is quite awesome. It's an incredible quartet. Now, from what I know, you've got Leo Appleyard on guitar. You've got Eric Guy on bass, and you've also got Ted Carrasco. Is that right?
Ted Carrasco, yeah.
Carrasco
right,
on drums. What a quartet! It's incredible. So you've got a gig coming up, don't you? You've got a live stream gig.
Yes.
That's happening down at Southampton Modern Jazz Club. And it's this Sunday, isn't it, at 6 p.m?
That's right.
Now, can people attend that? Can people go to that?
Yes, you can. There is a link to that.
Okay.
Which is available if you were to go on the Southampton Modern Jazz Club Instagram or Facebook. There will be a link to the live stream, and I think it's available on YouTube as well. Southampton Modern Jazz Club is the one to remember. And then if you find their page on social media anywhere, there'll be a link to the show. If
you have that link handy at some point, send it to me and I'll add it to the YouTube description. Don't do it now.
I shall.
But but I will, I'll add it to the YouTube description. So hopefully we'll get people down. Now it says a stream show. So how else can people watch it?
I believe it is available on. I think it's on YouTube actually. I just quickly had it popped up on my phone there.
Yeah. Great.
So
awesome.
It's a YouTube link, the one I'll send to you later on.
Yeah.
But it's on YouTube, and I think the link will go live about a quarter of an hour or so probably before we go. So about 5:45. The idea is we're going to play for an hour. Earlier this year, we were supposed to have a run of dates that conveniently coincided with the first week of lockdown. So that obviously had to be put on hold. We did manage to do a little bit during lockdown as a sort of remote video. Interestingly, I hadn't thought about it as much. Obviously the drummer Ted had to record the whole track, including all the solo choruses, with an intensity for I think it was 7.5 minutes, and
Holy
we talked about it. We talked about it afterwards and chatting with. It's amazing how much easier it got. So when it got to me putting my part on, it was fine, because there was obviously it's not as interactive as it would be if it were live. But I had something to work with. But poor guy, and he had absolutely nothing. He just had to pretend that there was something going on.
You don't even think about that kind of stuff, do you?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know. It's crazy. If you listen to it, it's incredible.
Well,
how we managed to.
How you say that? We have a little snippet here, so let's have a listen. This is the Tom White Quartet. it's grooving.
Great.
It's great. It really is. It's awesome. So before we move on from that, like, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see that group at a link we'll share on YouTube. And what's your Instagram? It is
my Instagram.
Yeah.
Is the Strolling Bone.
The Strolling Bone. It's obviously advertised on there as well. Please look it up on Instagram, and you'll find a link in the bio, I'm guessing. Will you?
Yes, it's on the bio, yeah.
Awesome.
You'll find it. At the moment, it's the link for this, but I will change it over.
No, please change it, yes. Then that will be at the Southampton Modern Jazz Club this Sunday at 6. So just diving into a little bit of that quartet, you do a lot of the arranging. Is it just you that does a lot of, composing? You compose a lot, don't you? And that one was called, I did have it down, This and That. And you composed that yourself, didn't you?
Yeah. So I like to write for, I mean, it's everyone, it's nice to write for yourself, write to what you enjoy. I've always really enjoyed it. Over the years, I've had several original projects. I had a septet for a while, so a 4-horn frontline, various incarnations of quintets with different saxophone players up front with me. But the quartet is the very first time I've ever gone out there on my own at the front of the ensemble. So definitely when I started doing it, and it wasn't all that long ago, probably about a year and a half ago, where we kind of got together. The first gig we did was I felt very exposed, because I'm so used to having sort of partner in crime at the front. Someone who's either taking the melody or I'm taking the melody, but they're doing the harmonies, they're playing around what I'm doing and responding to it. So there's someone else there, but there was that realization on the first gig of like, oh right, okay, so this is the next 75 minutes is just me, is it? So it's not just past the next two. Oh, sax solo. We'll do a sax solo.
Yeah.
But I've really been enjoying it, and it was obviously a shame we couldn't play earlier this year.
Of course.
But it's been so much fun writing for it, and now the tunes were starting to come into their own. And so it'll be interesting to see after the better part of a year off how it all goes. But I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot. It's kind of quite a lot an intensity about the gig on Sunday, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
getting it back in a room again. So.
It's super handy to have such an incredible band as well. I mean, Leo, what a player! It's something that's come up multiple times through this year when I've been streaming with these interviews, and everyone's like, you just can't replace that feeling and intensity, and even like feeding off each other's energy on stage. You just can't replace that, when you're playing in a room with someone.
I mean, yeah.
Things go on a different tangent.
well, they do, and that's funny because watching that little clip back of the video we did in lockdown, is interesting because it sounds as near as I could have hoped to it being like a live, to a live recording, but there are still elements of it where you can tell that's not. You can tell there's there's not that level of interaction. Like the tune, it's played very sort of like we're gonna this is the form we're gonna do. Obviously you can't divert. You can't be like, oh, I'm gonna take another chorus. Or, it doesn't work that way. It's all very predetermined, which sort of detracts from the energy somewhat. So this Sunday definitely will be a case of I'll let you know when I'm finished. Sort of.
Yeah. Honestly, tune in, everyone. It's going to be definitely worth it. So definitely find that link either on Tom's Instagram, or I will share it on the YouTube description. But definitely watch that. It's super exciting to hear live music again. I'm hoping it stays this way. And I'm hoping down the future that you and that band can go on the road and actually do a mountain of gigs. You mentioned to me before the stream started that potentially it could be a CD next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm looking at options, hoping that things will be opened up enough and available enough I mean, we could go into the studio now, but I think it's realistically would be next year that I aim to release something. I feel that I'm comfortable. I'm happy with the music. The musicians are absolutely fantastic, as you mentioned. Like the rhythm section, just fantastic players and fantastic people. Really nice people. So it makes a massive difference when you're working with people who you love their playing and you like them.
Yeah. Well, that's always handy.
makes a huge difference.
You'd definitely solo different if you didn't like them. Let's put it that way.
I mean, I don't know whether it'd be more or less intense.
Well,
I don't know. It's hard to say, but yeah, I'm definitely looking at it. Probably next year. There'll be. I will make it very, very known as soon as I know. When this would be the first release that I've.
Oh really? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Or of your own stuff, anyway.
Of my original stuff.
Yeah, because you've got quite an impressive discography already. So, but obviously of your own stuff, this would be great. So yeah, I can't wait for that, and I will whenever that happens next year. I'll put the link onto this description as well. So hopefully people will go check that out. So Tom, just before we finish, anyone got any questions? Please get them in, because I can't keep Tom all night, as much as I'd like to. But let's just have some quick fire questions if you're happy with that. So to do with music and trombone, what's one thing you've learned that that has not changed your life, but it might have changed your life? But what's one thing that you hold on as a musician that you pass on to someone?
Never lose the love of it. I think
that's a great one. Yeah. Always, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, you've summed it up. Never use the love of it. It's brilliant. Do you do some teaching yourself?
I not through not wanting to, but it's just not something I've done a lot of late over the last couple of years. But I have done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. If you could pick a gig, so say, no, that's a bit hard. I'm not going to be harsh on you on that one. What's a great place? What's one of your favorite tours you've ever done?
Favorite tours.
You don't have to narrow it down. It's not your favorite. It's just what's a good tour that you've done.
A good tour that I've done. That's
or a good gig.
That's a good gig. I went to Mexico City a few years back.
Nice.
Played Mexico City, which was that's a good few years ago. Which was fantastic. I've been there a couple of times now, which is a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
Going all the way to the other side of Russia was pretty interesting.
Oh yeah.
Just for a one-nighter. So it was a long. It was like a 4-hour flight to Moscow, and then a 7-hour internal flight, and then we did a 40-minute set and flew back. So it was.
As you do.
That's quite memorable for various reasons.
Yeah, obviously.
Not a lot of sleep on that one.
No. But, have you got any funny stories from any of these, any tours or gigs that you've done?
I mean, so many.
Some you can't tell on here.
my mind's just running haywire at the moment. So
yeah, that's fair one.
Yeah, but great. I mean, each tour presents like its own level. Everyone's different, so you're hanging out with different musicians, and they've got a different idea of what they want to do and how fun it is. And sometimes they'll do things or you'll do things, on the road, and it's takes you here, there, and everywhere, and it's great. Love it.
Of course. As a trombone player, being like, okay, you're not the, you're the odd one out. You don't have pistons. You don't have things that you hit. You got the slide. What's the one thing that has been important in your career that has helped with your technique?
What help with my technique? I think it's just like not stopping to listen to music. I think the listening part is as important as the performance part of it. It's all well and good being able to do everything, and or everything, but have like a pretty decent skill set. But if you're not listening to new music, I find if you're not listening to new music and actually questioning, so oh well, what is that? Why is that happening? Why can't then I feel that's for me developmentally that's really important. It has been really important. Just keep listening and questioning questioning things, I guess.
Yeah.
In that regard, and being like, well, how do they play that line? Just try and figure it out.
Yeah, that's great. As was said by Wayne Bergeron, which has stuck with me. Learning music is a discovery, and we'll never stop doing it, and just constantly work at that. So
absolutely,
that's great.
Absolutely.
Tom, I can't thank you enough, mate, for joining me tonight. It's been absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much for everyone that has joined. Thank you very much. I've had multiple new subscribers on YouTube. So thanks very much for checking in and keeping up with this channel. It's absolutely my pleasure and honor to chat to some of these absolute legendary musicians. And I hope you guys are getting something out of it as much as I am. So Tom, all the best for the future. If you do have anything coming up, go check out his Instagram page. Check out Tom's gig coming up this Sunday at the Southampton Modern Jazz Club at 6 p.m. Get the link. Check it out. It's going to be an incredible gig. Tom, I wish you all the best for the future. I look forward to seeing you hopefully on some playing work coming up.
Yeah, really definitely.
And for everyone else out there, please stay safe. I'm hoping to do one more stream next week before we shut it down for Christmas break. But I'll keep you posted with that, keep you right to the ground. Tom, I won't see you before Christmas, so a very Merry Christmas to you. And I hope to catch up with you in the new year.
Definitely.
Everyone out there, I love your work. Take care.